Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Patrice Lindo. I am the CEO of Career Nomad, and today we are going to talk about how to go from panic to power, closing the AI readiness gap in K through 20 institutions. I'm going to be giving you a roadmap to move from reaction to readiness when it comes to AI in education. So let's get started. For future reference, of course, if you have any questions or you want to follow up with me, feel free to email me at hello@patricelindo.com, or feel free to go to my website and let's lead this shift together. So let's talk about our current state. So as we are getting grounded in reality, AI adoption is moving faster than most schools can keep up with. Educators are feeling undertrained, students are improvising, and institutions are still deciding whether AI is a threat or a tool. That is a recipe for disaster. So how can we get it to a place where we are willingly and proactively using AI in a safe way to mitigate the panic and prepare? You'll notice that on the screen there's an AI glossary, so feel free to use that. We put a few, I'm going to say, starter languages, starter verbiage that you can use as you are starting on this journey or wherever you are on this journey. And of course, you can add to it. There'll be quite a few tools that you can use here on your journey. So why does this matter? Here's why. That panic that I just talked about, it can be dangerous. Without an intentional strategy, AI becomes inequitable, and schools that don't innovate while others do can tend to fall behind. Without guidelines, students can misuse tools, hello ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever tools of choice they have, be it Quillbot and going much further beyond the Grammarlys of the world. How can we get it to a place where they are AI literate? And in addition to that, our teams, whether it be our teachers, the school leadership, the support that they have, are in a position where they can prepare students to be ready, not just in the school environment today, but the impending job market that's already evolving. So as we're thinking about this, we want to think about equity, ethics, and then future employment. So here are some signs that you can use to assess where you are in your organization, in your school. If any of these sound familiar to you, your institution is likely not ready. If your AI policy is a sentence in the syllabus, and that's as far as it goes, if you even have one, right? The second is faculty Googling it on their own to come up with something that for no other reason, it's a learning tool, right? That they're doing solo with no guidance. Number three, where students are using it in isolation. So, they're in class doing their work and they're on, their tool of choice on their phones. Students are using AI in ways that going unchecked, and that can be problematic. So what I've done here is you'll notice that there's a tool at the bottom of the screen that's a classroom AI agreement. And in that AI agreement, it's a starting point for you to be able to not only use in your individual classrooms, but also use as I'm going to say a basis for your organization, if you don't have one already, for what using AI in a safe but productive way looks like in your school. So this is where we have some options. I have a framework that I've created. It's called the RNA Framework. That stands for Rebrand, Network, and Achieve Recognition. It's a human-centered and future-forward change management framework. So if you think of rebrand, we'll start there. Let's shift the narrative. AI is a tool that we can leverage for equity when used correctly. What does that look like? Well, if we made AI available, let's say, you had something like Microsoft and you got Copilot. Copilot is a licensed, I'm going to say branded tool that you could provide to your students, and they could use that as their point for research, as their point for support when, let's say, they were writing papers. They can use it to check their grammar. It can be all things in one. So that's one example where AI can equal equity in a safe and mitigated space that hopefully, they can use in the ways that it's intended, but also leveraging the speed, the efficiency, and I'm going to say the building the muscle to use AI the way it needs to. Networking. Now, when it comes to networking, how can you, as a faculty member, build task forces across the faculty groups, administration, and the students, right? There is strength in that network. So it's no longer just, something that they would do, let's say in a computer class, for example. It would be something that could be used throughout all of the classes that the students are, using and interacting with. And it's a way to get them on the global stage once they are able to use this human-centered, way of connecting with one another to achieve the outcomes, whether it be good grades, whether it be research, whether it's, applying to college, whatever the case might be. It's a great way to leverage what they're learning real time. And then finally, achieve recognition. How can you in your schools train your faculty and students to be visible leaders when it comes to AI literacy? Because readiness is not just about the tools that you're using, it's also about trust and transformation. So getting it to a place where you almost have what we call in corporate America a change champion network, right? People that are early adopters that can go in, learn, the best ways, the best use cases of the tool, so that they can go out and within their specific groups get their groups up to speed after those groups have been trained, and also serve as a first line of defense when it comes to questions or concerns that they can bring back, of course, to the administration so that it can be either answered, worked out, or promoted, right, if it's a win. But it's a great way to really credentialize the use of the tools that you decide to use. So what does readiness look like? This is where, you really take a look at doing a deep dive of checking the boxes and really knowing that you have set yourself up for success when it comes to AI. Your faculty has been trained and also has had the opportunity to test and to use the tools in advance of it being rolled out to the entire school community. Secondly, students are empowered with ethical guidance, right? So they have safe spaces. So there's places that they can go and actually test out the tools. They can make mistakes. They can see what the I'm saying guardrails are. They can become innovative. It's literally just what this says, a sandbox, a place that they can play and learn at the same time. So they're really empowered to go out there and do so in a way that doesn't cause any harm. Thirdly, the AI tools are also used in a way that reinforce, not replace, critical thinking. So it demonstrates, or I should say, it empowers them to demonstrate the students that they can go in, for example, and research a topic, as they're, let's say, writing a paper, for example, and they can go and get the research that they need, but they still have to use their own sense of analysis and the command of the English language, for example, to write their papers. It's not just like, here's my homework, ChatGPT, give me the answers. No, it's a place that they can literally build that muscle where they still have to critically think to get their assignments done. And then finally, and your policies. They're co-created, right? Not just copy pasted. So what I have added here is a template for you, if you don't have one already, for you to use when it comes to your AI policy. And so when you take a look at this, you can see what the bare bones need to be, the framework, but then of course you can update it for what makes sense at your schools. Okay. So here is an area where you can think through what you should be, or not should be, what constitutes AI misuse. So here you'll see that these are some of the things that usually come up. People are saying, well, what is misuse, right? Is it wrong, for example, to go to the co-pilots or the Geminis of the world and literally ask, well, what happened with this historical event, and then the student uses that and submits it as an answer? Is that plagiarism? Is it the fact that it was informed by that, just like they, I'm going to date myself, went to an encyclopedia and got that information, and they can't just exactly write what's there, but they can definitely use that to form their answers. So this is where redefine what misuse is, right? So it's AI generated work, literally copy paste without disclosure, right? Or using it to bypass what is expected, right? So think of the goals of the class, or using it as if they were one of their other, colleagues, one of their other students, right? But again, these are just some guidelines. There may be some additional things that at your school you want to include, but we wanted to make sure that we gave you a basis to start. Next, how can you tell if AI is used dishonestly? Well, their tone, right? If it's overly formal, if it just doesn't sound like them, if there's no reference to citations, if they can't explain it verbally, again, some of the same things that we would have done prior to this, but now, it's a little bit, or I should say a lot of bit easier when, for example, you have, several students that have the same responses because they all went on ChatGPT, for example, to get their answers. And then how you can handle it, if you suspect misuse. Here are some conversation starters. Then next, how can you deal with the conversation of should schools ban AI tools altogether, right? And why that, needs to be done, or why you think, that should be done, because there are ways that you can literally not think, but implement to enforce how to properly use AI tools versus banning it altogether. There's just a way that, when you're thinking about AI, instead of banning it, you want to clarify your expectations, right? Set the rules for engagement so that, the students are set up for success. And also if they go outside of those lines, where the potential problems can arise. Next, how do you talk to the students about it? So again, before you get started and as you are using these AI tools, these are conversation starters that you can use with them, to make sure that they understand the premise behind using the AI and what it can do to really enhance and not harm the work that they're doing. And then finally, this is one of the most popular questions when it comes to AI, is using AI plagiarism. And so just like we said on question one, not automatically, right? It depends on how it's being used, the guidelines they were given, and of course, the fact that you set them up for success with what the AI policy is for your classroom/school. Also making sure that the students describe their process when they're going to use it after you've given them the assignments. And then, of course, staying current, right? Because if you, for example, use ChatGPT, there's a new version coming out pretty quickly. So you want to make sure that, we all stay current on where the tools have evolved to once you've decided on what that is for your organization. So next, let's talk about a real world example. So there was an HBCU that I worked with recently that followed, a 3-phase workout for how they got, their faculty members and school ready to use the AI tools available. So the first thing they really focused on was getting their faculty ready, right? Because one of the things they wanted to make sure of is that, number one, students were using it and that the faculty were prepared for that. So they created micro learnings that were not only a part of their their professional development, but also something that they could do on their own, right? So think in terms of a Udemy or another MOOC of some kind that they could go in, and based on the particular tool that they decided to use, that the faculty could get smart on those tools. Next, what they did is, remember we talked about co-creation/collaboration. They created an honor code that not only the faculty, weighed in on, but also that the students in student government weighed in on. So that collaboration was there so that both sides felt heard and were set up for success. And then finally, there was a capstone, I'm going to say, activity that was done to make sure that everyone understood how AI tools would be used in this particular school. And so they were given an assignment. the faculty within their microlearning, the students, once they went into, if I remember correctly, it was business classes and English classes, classes that specifically had a lot of writing in them. And so there was almost a pass that they needed, of course, that students needed to pass to be able to legitimately and with permission use AI to be able to be successful in their assignments. What was the result? The students felt very much heard and, I'm going to say, empowered to use the tools that they wanted to. And then also there was academic integrity, right? The faculty also were set up for success where it wasn't a gotcha type situation, or they weren't, trying to decipher or decide whether, AI was used. Once it went outside of the guidelines that they had agreed upon, that helped to streamline, these types of things. And so there is definitely, a process that you can use that is, I'm going to say, very user friendly to be able to do something similar in your school if you don't already have this going on. So what I would recommend is that, in a 30-day roadmap, you can audit where you are, right, in week 1. In week 2, you can figure out and decide who your champions are, from the students to faculty members to people in your administration, that will become your change champion. So these are your early adopters that, you have around the table. And then, you decide on your policy, you decide on your frequently asked questions, you decide on your micro learnings and how you're going to roll this out. Then in week 3, you pilot the tools, right, with clear guidelines and boundaries for what the outcomes are that you're driving towards. So it's familiarity with the tool, it's rules around using the tool, it's being able to, actually use it to complete an either an assignment or some sort of test. But this creates, the feedback that you need for your test pilot so that you can share the results and adapt it in week 4. So then it's no longer just bureaucratic, it's movement, it's progression, it's showing up in a way that sets you up for much success when it comes to AI on all sides of the fence. But it's something that you can literally start now. So what's at stake? If you don't do this right now, you risk widening the digital divide. There's potential scandals when it comes to integrity. I can tell you, I have a student myself that I know of that actually it was about 10 days before graduation, they handed in an assignment and they were accused of plagiarism by AI tool, right? So there was no, policy in place. They insist that they did not, chat GPT their assignment. They did say that they use it as a point of reference, but it was not a lift and shift type situation. And so, the graduating students, were literally caught off guard because at this point, they understand, of course, what plagiarism is, but also there is almost expectation, for lack of a better word, that we have to meet the moment where it is, and we don't want to cause these type of, well, not cause, but be a part of these types of crises. We want to avoid them if at all possible. So what are we going to be, right? A guide or a gatekeeper? And without having these things in place, we tend to be on the side of gatekeeping versus guiding the way through what's inevitable. What we have here, and this is a part of our deck, so you will be able to use this. You remember that I referenced the AI, the different things that you can use, right? So we created a toolkit where we have the quick start readiness audit, whether you in your organization and you and as an individual educator are ready to use AI, and there it can be scored. Then we have the microstrategy template, the 30-day plan, the things that you would be doing in week 1 through week 4, then your faculty readiness checklist, and then your student discussion prompts, and then your institutional planning grid, right? Using the RNA method. So, that you developed a shared AI definition, you formed an AI readiness task force, and then you've learned launched your faculty // micro learning series. So these are things that you can use and you have at your fingertips so that, depending on where you are on your AI journey at your organization, you can use these tools as a starting point to be set up for success. Finally, the last thing that you will see here is that there's an editable AI spreadsheet, and there's a link to that as well that includes the policy drafting template, the faculty FAQs that we talked about, the classroom AI template, and the education glossary. Those are all hyperlinked in the deck as well. All right. Here is the AI audit spreadsheet that I mentioned, and you would score it on 1 to 5. And that is it. So I want to make sure that you have the opportunity to, of course, ask any questions that you would like to, but that is the end of our presentation for today. I appreciate your time and energy in today's session, and feel free to ask questions.